Hi everyone, I am sending this video here from my beautiful backyard. I'm actually in my bee garden. Hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully the sounds of my neighborhood won't drown me out at any point. But I wanted to make a quick video, and I figured my backyard was a good a place as any to talk a little bit about animal guides, because I know there's been lots of questions coming up as many of you navigate the very newness of trying to learn how to do a shamanic journey and layering that with working with an animal guide. And there's so many nuances and aspects to that. And so what I wanted to do was just create a little bit of a supplementary video to maybe clear up some questions and help with anything that might be happening for you as I try to support you through this process. So I've got a little notebook down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what's happening. One of the questions that's been coming up, and it's a really valid one as we first learn how to navigate journeying, is how do I know I'm not making it up? How do I know that this is real? That what's coming in my mind isn't just something that I just saw a crow today, or I just, was in the woods and this animal came up, and how do I know that I haven't made that up? So this first question is really a really valid one, and one I wanted to touch on first because it's a big part of our role as we move into being priestesses and really owning our own intuition and really owning our ability to journey, because self-doubt for women is a really big one. And if we can learn to master this, if we can learn to navigate this whole piece of doubting what we see, of doubting ourselves, of doubting our ability to journey, of doubting our ability to work with our animal guides, everything else will really just fall into place as we continue to work on it. So I'm not suggesting it's not going to be hard, but only that this is a really big piece for many women. So fake it till you make it. We're going to begin with using our imagination. That's the rich, beautiful thing that we as humans have the ability to do, is use our beautiful imaginations to take ourselves down into the lower earth realm, to really allow the images and animals that come to us at that time to just flow forward. So a few couple rules around it. I know I've already mentioned some of this in the other video, but it's nice to have a bit of a refresher without having to go back and fast forward it all the way to the end, because this piece is probably pretty close to the end of the third video. We want to see our guide 3 times, and that can be a really great helpful thing to to make sure that we see. So you might see a baby and then you might see an adult, you might see a beak and then a wing, you might see a claw or a talon or a fang, and any part of the animal's body. If you see it 3 times, then that's a confirmation. Also keeping in mind that if you have an animal, you don't just have, for example, an owl. You've got the entire species of owl. So one time you could see a barn owl and another time a snowy owl, or one time you could see a little pygmy owl or something different within that realm of species. None of them are wrong. They're all right. It may be that, traditionally you have a little pygmy owl that comes to work with you with medicine for that time, but later you may have a big powerful screech owl come in to do another piece of work with you that's needing of a little bit more intense energy. The same may be said for, I know when I was working with some children many years ago, oftentimes their guides would appear as juvenile. They would appear very young. So we would have a baby moose or a baby fox that would then grow into something older as the child grew up. So we may have a baby animal and then an adult animal. So all of those are right within the spectrum. Some of you posted some really great questions on Facebook, which I wanted to touch a little bit on, saying that you had seen other animals in your journey, or that a different animal confirmed the animal that you had. Sometimes our animals can turn into different animals to make a point. So sometimes that can be confusing. So it could be that the ant really wanted to get the point across and made itself into a crow to say, yes, it's the ant. So, everything in that realm is is important and also means something. But the interesting thing about the shamanic journey is no one can really tell you what it means. So one woman on Facebook posted something really interesting, that different predators had helped her find her eventual animal guide, and she wondered if there was something in that for her. And I would suggest that yes, there probably is, and that might be something very interesting to explore. Once you're sure of your animal guide, that might be a good question to take to your animal guide to ask, you know, why was that this way in the journey, and have your animal guide help you and support you with those questions. Sometimes the name can be odd. So we've had a couple women who've journeyed to ask their animal guides names and come back with things like Bob or George. I always suggest absolutely take the first name that comes forward. It doesn't have to be some really unique, wonderful, deep, powerful name. It could be something very simple. My daughter's, her animal guide, she asked that question and it came back, his name was Bob. But if you look Bob up in the name dictionary, it means fierce and powerful protector. So look the name up. If it's Bob or George or Richard or Betsy or Sue or something like that, go and look up the meaning of the name, because chances are that's going to have more meaning for you than the actual name that the guide gave you, especially if it's something that we're very familiar with, like Jenny or Sue. Let's see. Sometimes the animals can appear to us blurry, they're not clear, and it can take a couple times, so just be gentle on yourself. Know that not only are you journeying to get an animal guide, but you're also journeying to learn how to journey for the first time, so it can take a little bit. Sometimes distractions can be a big one. People in the house, children running around, calling our names. So I find wearing earphones or earbuds when I'm journeying if I need to be really focused, making sure that no one's in the house. That may not be possible, so always a big favorite of mine is getting into the bathtub. Lock the door. You're every bit entitled to do that, mamas, if you have children, and put the earbuds in and the phone on a safe ledge, or take your computer in with you. So those are some little tricks of the trade that might help with shamanic journeying. Sometimes you might need to do a little bit of a meditation before going into the journey. You might choose to just sit for 10 minutes and clear your mind. If you go to the Shamanic Journeying resource page, where you can find that is, you've got that main page with all the little boxes. One of those boxes will say Shamanic Journeying Resources. Click that box and it'll take you through to some suggestions for different music. One of my favorite ones has springtime birds, and it's just birds in the morning chirping and singing. And I usually will, if I have to do a big piece of work for myself, or I have a big question I'm going in for, or if I'm just clouded for the day and I want to do a little bit of a morning practice, I'll just listen to those birds singing and allow my brain to just think and just get it all out. So instead of trying to clear my mind, although if that works for you, please do it, I let everything come forward until I feel empty. And when I feel that empty feeling, usually about the same time that very naturally the next track begins, which is the first shamanic drumming track, I can go right into the shamanic journey, and I find that very helpful. Let's see what other questions I have. Sometimes your guide can shapeshift to confirm a point. So once you have your guide and you start working with it, you may find that it changes into something different, or what looks like a different animal shows up. The best way to just make sure it's your guide is just to ask. Like I said, sometimes early days when I was first learning how to journey over a decade ago, one of the things that happened was my guide changed into this giant horse with these big front teeth, and it bit into my heart to make a point. And it was very startling because not only was it the first time that my guide had showed up as a different animal, but it was doing a healing on me, and of course it seemed like it was being vicious. And so it took me a little bit to sort of work with that. So sometimes it can happen with an animal where they want to make a point and they might turn around and growl at you, or many times my animal would bite my head off. And finally I said, "Why are you biting my head off?" And it said, "Because you're in your head too much, you're thinking too much, you need to be in your heart." And so point taken, point made. The trick is to just constantly go back and ask the guide. If you don't understand, go back and ask your guide. If you're not sure what's going on, go back and ask your guide. So hopefully that can answer some of your questions. The realm of normal is absolutely huge. The feeling you'll get when you know your guide is your guide, regardless of what the beautiful animal is this deep feeling of love. You'll feel an excitement to get to know your guide a little bit more. Trepidation is also very normal too. If it's a guide that feels very overwhelming, perhaps you don't like spiders very much and now you've got an animal guide as a spider. Sometimes, you know that saying, you know, if it's uncomfortable, sometimes maybe that's the place you need to be. But there will be a feeling of rightness in that. So even if it's a spider or something that you're really not comfortable with, there'll be this followed by this feeling of really deep rightness in your bones. And so really that's what you're looking for. I'm going to make another video, and this one's going to be password protected, but the other one is going to be made public. talking a little bit about how to work with your animal guide once you have it, and I'll be posting that probably sometime in the next couple days or so. And I think that's everything. I'm sure that there's other questions that I haven't addressed, but really just knowing that your guide can show up as different guides. Ask, always ask your guide if you're not sure. Maybe look for a guide for 3 times, see if you can see it 3 times in the journey. Sometimes your guide will come once and it'll be right in your face and you'll just know, and that is okay too. Making sure that your truth cord, or that part of you that's deep inside that knows when something feels right, when that deep yes is in you, trust that and go with it. And if that uncomfortable feeling is there, or a feeling of no, go with that too, and just simply wait a couple days, clear your mind, and do another journey, and just be open to whatever comes forward. Okay, everyone, well, have a really good day. It's Tuesday here in the bee yard. I think what I'm going to do is to leave you. I will give you a quick little look around at my bees, and I'm hoping you can hear them. There's my bees. All right, everyone, over and out.